Day 82.
Of the 29th year and beyond.
Yes, and I guess we're going to continue in the story of us. On yesterday's message, we talked about um, intimacy, creating intimacy when uh, one person in the marriage is not open to be able to listen to the passions and the significant things that the other person want to share, and how then you can begin to create an intimate relationship with someone else, with a third party, right? Because one person has these passions and these desires to share,
Right.
and the other person isn't receptive. And we shared a quote with yesterday's message. But there's another quote from the movie and the story of us. Again, Gail and I really use this as a great teaching aid. It's a movie that stars Bruce Willis and Michelle Pfeiffer.
1999.
1999 is when the movie came out. But there's some great teaching moments with this movie, so I really highly recommend that you check it out. But another quote that I wanted to share from that movie: when the communication suffers, right, and you begin to establish intimate relationships with other people because you're not communicating. This was one of the quotes that we thought was really significant too, where Michelle Pfeiffer's character, Katie, says, "I think the loudest silences are the ones filled with everything that's been said wrong, said 300 times, until fighting becomes the condition rather than the exception. And suddenly, without even knowing it, it becomes the language of the relationship, and your only option is a silent retreat to neutral corners."
And that's not a good place to be on any given day.
Silence being the language for your marriage. I mean, that's horrible. One of the things I tell people all the time, once you begin to cease communicating, that's the beginning of the end.
Yeah.
Because all you're left with is speculation at this point. Now, because you're not communicating, you're left to what some other person is thinking and conjuring up in their mind. And let me tell you, it's very easy for you to begin to run off on some tangent
Yes.
based on what you have concocted in your own mind because someone hasn't shared anything and you stop inquiring. That's the worst thing that can happen, is that breakdown in communication. And then when she says the silence being loud of everything that's been said and not said, everything said 100 times, and you retreat to neutral corners. And that language denotes that you are no longer in a relationship.
Yeah.
Now you're sparring partners,
Right.
or you're battling one another.
Yeah, and you're not engaged. I mean, because you talk about, and I hear people say this, well, we haven't talked in 2 days. Huh?
How is that even possible when this is the person that you love and that you're sharing the journey with?
I'm like, you haven't talked in 2 days. What do you mean you haven't talked in 2? Okay, I don't have anything to say. No, you do have something to say. And that's the very reason why you haven't said anything in 2 days. But okay, you want to act like a child and not say it. But the bottom line is you have to bring it to the person. You have to bring it to them and say, hey, look, we need to sit down and talk. And sometimes I feel like you're saying the same thing over and over again. And I know this is one of his biggest things. He doesn't like to beat a dead horse over and over again. But sometimes you have to take the time. And sometimes you just maybe need to say it differently. But this is the thing. And just like I said a couple of days ago, sometimes you have to sit down and understand what part you played in this part.
Right.
And accept responsibility for that. That's one of the biggest challenges that I see when I talk to young people or even older people in marriage. No one wants to take responsibility for how they got to that point. And it's always a two-way street.
Well, more times than not, persons are looking for whom to blame,
Yes.
and it's never going to be themselves, right? But when you go back to 1 Corinthians, the 13th chapter, love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it keeps no record of wrongs. See, when you're starting to keep score, that is not a loving act. Well, you did this, and you said that. And so now, again, you're getting into a situation where you become enemies or combatants, right, versus lovers, being in a loving relationship. And so you don't want your communication to cease, and you definitely don't want to be your language a cold, dead silence.
Yes.
Continue to communicate. And just like Gail says, sometimes you have to find new ways, different ways to be able to reach. But ultimately, your priority should be making certain that each of you have been able to effectively communicate. So whatever you need to do to make that happen, do it. Be like Nike. Just do it. Until tomorrow. If the
Bye.
Lord says the same.